Hello everyone, James O'Reilly here from Northeast Wealth and welcome to our 2024 Federal Budget Wrap-Up. Now, as always, we have a general advice disclaimer here, so I'll give you a couple of moments to have a look at that before we kick off. Okay, let's get started. Individuals. There are some really significant changes that are happening for individuals, but of course the majority of them we kind of already knew about. Stage 3 tax cuts are coming on July 1, 2024, which makes me feel very old because it feels like only yesterday that we were doing a budget for the coalition government, a budget wrap-up for the coalition government, and talking about how miles in the future in July of 2024 there was going to be these significant changes again. Well, we're here. It's just on our doorstep. Of course, if you, unless you've been living under a rock, this means the vast majority of Australians are going to get a pretty meaningful tax cut, and that, of course, is a good thing. But of course, that's information that hopefully you're already across. I know for sure that all of our members are well and truly across how the Stage 3 tax cuts are going to impact their financial situation. If you want to know how it will impact yours, there are a lot of great calculators that you can get online just by Googling that, or alternatively, if you want to see how that plugs into your actual budget planner and those sorts of things, feel free to hit us up and we can solve that for you. $1 billion allocated to crisis and transitional accommodation for women and children fleeing domestic violence. This is on top of some good work that's been made in this space over the previous few budgets, so funds here are certainly welcomed. And the last one here, which is news, is the $300 energy rebate, which will be available from households for next financial year. A question we're already getting is, what is that actually going to look like? Do we have to apply for it? The answer is no. When you get your energy bill, the household energy bill, it will be $75 lower, a provision for the fact that the government has actually rebated $75 of that cost. Despite the fact that this is a good thing for households, of course, because any less energy costs or less costs anywhere are a good thing, I hate this. And what I really dislike about it is that there's absolutely no targeting here whatsoever. It is abundantly obvious in our economy that there are Australians that are doing it incredibly tough and Australians that are doing it pretty darn comfortably. Indeed, for people who have got high asset bases and high investments, high inflation and therefore higher interest rates has actually been great for their earnings. And we've got many members that have worked very hard and they're now going on holidays and living their best lives, and power to them. But equally, there are many Australians that are truly below the poverty line now. And throwing $300 at every household just willy-nilly, for me, seems like a grab for votes. It seems no coincidence to me that that's the strategy that they've applied, thinking about the fact that this is their last election this is their last federal budget before the next election. This really does seem like buying votes for me, frankly, and I feel that they could have very easily put a little bit more care into this and delivered a better outcome. If we move across to Social Security, as it says here, there's going to be a 10% bump to rent assistance payments from September of 2024. This is meaningful. There was a bump last year, of course, so this is on top of that. We are observing that rental expenses are much, much higher, and there's a number of reasons for that. But one of the biggest reasons for that, as a side note, is the supply and demand of property, and there is just not enough supply of property, and that is having a huge impact on property values, but also the cost of rental. It's good that we've seen this bump in rent assistance, but also, as far as I'm concerned, I think this budget could have done a much better task of addressing the fundamental problem that exists around housing and making sure that we deliver more money still in that important area. From a superannuation perspective, pleasingly, superannuation is going to be payable on paid parental leave from July of 2025. And what that means is that if you are looking after bub and you are on paid parental leave, just to be clear again, that doesn't necessarily have to be the female role. That can now be the male role, which is a fantastic change that we've seen. That 20 weeks of paid parental leave that you get, that is also going to attract a superannuation payment on top, which will go to your super fund. So that's a good positive step there. Very concerningly, there's still no mention of the $3 million cap on super balances before the 30% tax applies. This structure, this tax is very, very poorly put together, and it's going to have some really far-reaching implications for people in this space. not just because, of course, the tax rate is going up significantly, but also because the proposal is that this is going to apply to unrealized gains, not just the gains when you buy and sell assets, but incrementally as the value of something grows. And that completely changes the strategy of what we do when we hold assets. So I'd personally really hope that some common sense would apply here, and we would hear some news about this prior to or at the budget, but we have not heard anything as of yet. Clean energy transition. We saw some really positive steps here. A lot of money being thrown at this transition over the next few years. So the obvious headline ones here, 1.7 billion to develop some green metals and low carbon fuel industries, 6.7 billion and another 7 billion in tax incentives for hydrogen production and critical minerals production respectively. From my end, I think this is a really positive step in the right direction, particularly for a country that, of course, still has a huge energy footprint and needs to be better there. And also, I think it speaks to something that we've been talking to our members about for a couple of years now, which is that this is the future. This is where we're going, and we've spoken at length about the idea that it's these industries that are going to evolve, and these are the industries that are going to have more capital, and they're going to have huge opportunity for growth. Indeed, overnight we've seen a material benefit in the performance of some of a lot of the holdings of our members because of, for example, critical minerals production. This great news that's come in this space, and as a result, some of those holdings that you have materially increased in value. So we don't think this is a one-off thing. We think this is a long-term trajectory, and we know where we want to be invested. We want to be invested in a sustainable way, because we hold the very firm view that over the long term we are going to see more and more tailwinds applied in the sector, and inversely, when we move across to what we consider to be, let's call it dirty energy, we're going to see a lot more headwinds in that space, and we don't want to be left holding those assets when no one else wants them. All of this said, there is still a grossly inadequate plan to achieve our net zero transition by 2050. And again, this is a step in the right direction, but I do harbour a little bit of frustration in the sense that these investments, they still lack targeting. There still isn't a really clear path or idea about if we do this, and very specifically it's going to have the following flow-on benefits, and that contributes specifically to our 2050 commitments. So it would be wonderful to see a clearer plan there. Let's move to the broader topic of economics. Now, luckily, this is video 1 of 2. Well, depending on whether or not you like economics, I guess, probably not. But if you are one of those strange people, then it's lucky that this is video 1 of 2, because tomorrow I'm going to have the opportunity to sit down with Chief Economist at Beta Shares, David Bassanese, and he's been on in front of our members a few times now, and he's a wealth of resource, and I can't think of a better person to have a discussion about this budget, and in particular in an economic setting. So this is the short bit, and if you want something that is not only deeper and richer, but also coming from someone who frankly is just so much more knowledgeable in this space, then please tune into that next video. We will be sure to share it with you all. So the first thing, which is positive, is that we have a second successive budget surplus. And as a reminder, a budget surplus is very simply kind of like a household surplus, where the money coming in to Australia exceeds the overall expenses that we're going to have for the year. And so it is good to have a surplus. Having said that, we really should be expecting nothing less, because we have absolute ideal conditions for a budget surplus. We have terms of trade at 100-year lows. We have unemployment at 50-year lows. We had a huge amount of windfall gains over the last 12 months, or windfall tax, I beg your pardon, as a result of the tariffs we have on exported coal and gas and iron ore, which have risen in value significantly, and commensurately our tariff has risen there too. So putting all those things together, it would have been a damning indictment if we didn't have a budget surplus for this particular year. But having said that, there is a real concern here flowing on, which is around this decade of deficits. It's projected over the following 10 years that we will have deficits, which is a damn long time to predict that you're going to be in the red. And in particular, as it says here, $122 billion of projected losses over the next 4 years alone. My biggest concern with that, a lot of this is projected based on the expenses that we're looking to allocate in the coming years. A lot of those expenses are net good for Australia in terms of where the money's being allocated. But my concern here is that even over a 10-year period, there really doesn't seem to be any firm plan as to how we're going to recoup those losses other than just bracket creep. And as a reminder, bracket creep is where everyone's income, hopefully, will be significantly higher in 10 years from today than today, just with wage growth and CPI alone, even if you stay in the same role that you're doing. And so if tax brackets don't change, then everyone is paying more and more tax over time as their wages continue to grow and the rate of tax commensurately increases. So that to me seems a poor strategy. And it's also concerning, frankly, that if we're relying on bracket creep over the next 10 years, what it is saying is underpinning the fact that we're all going to be paying more tax over the next 10 years, increasingly year on year, and that sucks. The last piece here is that pretty boldly, Labor have made this bet against the RBA's predictions. The Labor modelling in the budget indicates that inflation will fall within the 2 to 3% target range, or the RBA's 2 to 3% target range, by Christmas. But that flies in the face of most of the RBA's numbers and their projections, and I find that a really, really bold thing to do immediately before the election. I think about if they get this right, then hats off to them, because it's a big call to make. But if they get this wrong, and I think they're just going to expose themselves to saying, well, that was obviously poor economic management, because we had the RBA who are best equipped to predict where we're going to be in terms of CPI and headline inflation. And then you bet against that in all of your modelling. So how does that enable us to trust anything that you hand forward in the future? So it is a very brave call. In summary, that's a lot of the measures that have come through in the budget were things that we already knew that they'd been released at a certain point, some either much earlier, for example, with the stage 3 tax cuts, or alternatively leaked in the weeks coming up to the budget. I personally, it's a very difficult budget to deliver. Credit to Jim Chalmers, because you do want to make sure that Australians do have some sort of cost of relief, but on the other hand, or cost of living relief, I'm sorry, but on the other hand, you also want to make sure that you're not too inflationary with your spending mechanisms, because if Australians all say, oh, fantastic, we don't have to worry about anything, let's go on those holidays again, we know what's going to happen to CPI. It's going to go up, and that's going to stubbornly keep inflation high or rise inflation, and then we're going to see more interest rate hikes, which is more pain for all of us. I don't necessarily think they've done a great task of that. I think that on the whole, this is a pretty inflationary budget. I note that, for example, if we think about the $300 energy bill relief, that's one measure alone. But more recently, we've also had state governments that have done similar things. We have WA, Queensland, and Victoria all recently have their own state budgets, and a core part of that has been relief for example, kids with private school, with public school children. There's been relief for state-based relief for energy bills, and so this feels like it's just going to superimpose on top of that. I can't help but feel that for the most part, this would be inflationary rather than deflationary at a time when we need deflation, because as a reminder, deflation means that CPI will come down. And if CPI is falling down from currently around, call it 3.5% down to that 2 to 3% target range, that's the green light for the Reserve Bank to start pulling the lever and reducing interest rates again, which is the most meaningful way that Australians could have their financial situation changed. Again, tomorrow I'm going to have the pleasure of sitting down with David from Beta Shares to go through this in a lot more detail and get his perspective on it. So looking forward to sharing that video with you all too. But if there are any questions about the budget and how this is likely to affect your own personal finances, please don't be afraid to get in touch. We would love to talk to you and make sure that everything is as clear as can be. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.